Hello, everybody. This is Carol Maletta. Welcome to the Parenting 411 podcast, where we share information parents need from sources they can trust. I remember vividly walking the aisles of Babies R Us when I was still pregnant with my twin boys. There was so much involved in taking care of your baby, I thought. In fact, I recall thinking to myself, lady, you've been in the wrong line of business. The baby business is where it's at. Of course, as with anything, it's important to discern what you really need and buy accordingly. However, even if you're fairly disciplined about what you buy, kids come with a lot of stuff, and it keeps coming. Toys, clothes, books, sports gear, you name it. If we aren't careful, it can really take over the house. Unless you consult with my guest today. She is Cawley, certified professional organizer. As the owner and founder of Simplify You, she specializes in residential team organizing. She is a fully licensed and insured certified professional organizer, and there is really a small number of those worldwide. Cawley delivers time-tested ways to order your household chaos and reduce your stress. Now, here's a fun fact that I love about Cawley. Before founding Simplify You in 2003, Cawley worked as a professional personal shopper for affluent clients in Manhattan, and as a professional set and costume designer for the Joffrey Ballet and the Juilliard School. And she also worked as an award-winning retail manager for Chanel in Manhattan and Jaeger in Great Britain. She was a founding member and a membership director of Mothers of North Arlington, and a founding member of Awesome Women Entrepreneurs. And she also supports other local organizations. She holds a BFA in set and costume design from SUNY Purchase, and she attends 3 book clubs, and she is an enthusiastic member of numerous entrepreneurial groups. So welcome, Cawley.
Thank you so much, Carol. I really appreciate you inviting me to come onto your podcast today.
Absolutely. Well, I like to bring people who know what they're talking about and who have valuable information for parents, and so that's certainly you. Great. Now, as I mentioned, you have that fascinating background in creative spaces. So I'm wondering how that brought you into professional organizing.
It's such a great question. So just as you've mentioned, I'm on my 7th career now, right? So I majored in set and costume design, worked in New York City. I was also a wardrobe mistress for Driving Miss Daisy off Broadway. I worked with Morgan Freeman. I saw him in his underwear 8 times a week. I did my high-end personal shopping for wealthy women in New York, and I worked at the Chanel boutique. And then we moved to England, and in England I did manage high-end retail at Jaeger. And it was so interesting because when we moved back to America in 2000, when my daughter started kindergarten in 2003, I kind of was like, oh, well, what can I be when I grow up? What can I take these varied careers? Was there any kind of commonality? And I realized the commonality, it wasn't that I was an amazing costume designer or a brilliant salesperson. What I was organized. And, I could get a show done on time and on budget. I could get the projects for my clients, my personal assistant clients, done in a timely manner. And I thought, wow, and this was just 2003. It was early on before, I would go to a dinner party and I'd say, oh, I'm an organizer. And they'd say, oh, for what labor union? I'm like, oh, no, I mean, like in your closets and pantries. It was still a really new idea 20 years ago. But I thought, I can do this. I knew I was organized. What I found out very quickly was that I could also teach others how to be organized. And that's the key ingredient, right? My best success is when I give the people the tools that they need so that they can stay organized, right? They may not know how to get there, but hopefully I can get them there so they can stay there. And of course, when they have a new kid or they move house or, something like that, there are circumstances they'll invite me back. but the bones, the structure is still in place. So yeah, I'm very lucky. It's been 20 years now since I started my business, and it's amazing how the industry has grown. Once upon a time, people were embarrassed. They wouldn't tell people that they had hired a professional organizer, but now we're just considered, who's your trainer, who's your organizer, who's your cook, who's your party planner. Nobody's embarrassed. We realize that we can only do what we're really good at, and let's hire the professionals to help guide us to do these other things. So yeah, that's how it got started.
Now, you talked about how in the beginning, a lot of people had not heard of a professional organizer. So I'm wondering early on, who were your clients? What kinds of people were they? What kinds of problems were they having?
Absolutely. So you mentioned I was a founding member of MONA, the Mothers of North Arlington. And what a blessing. That gave me community, and I get so much joy out of it. And it's still going strong, that nonprofit. Here we are 20 years later, 23 years if you start from when it started as Moms Club International. And it was a natural thing. I had a kindergartner when I started my business. I only had one child. Unlike you, I was not an overachiever. I didn't have twins. But, I understood what it was like to be a parent of a young child, to be living in this community and the expectations around it. And so my immediately my other clients and supporters were the other women and parents that I met through Mona. And it was wonderful because at one point, there were no other, by word of mouth, I didn't have to do any advertising early on. I just worked for one person, and their friend would come in and have a coffee, and she'd be like, "Look at my pantry." And then that person would call me, and so on and so on. So it was such a blessing to have that community. And I still consider the Mothers of North Arlington, the people that I met there are still some of my dearest friends and colleagues. I think that's how we met, through the business women, people who were starting businesses in Mona. So yeah, it's been a blessing for me for sure.
Yes. So what do you think is the source of stress, or what gets in the way of us getting organized? What's our problem?
Yeah, no. So I think the biggest problem is that we all have excess that we need to edit. Unless you're a minimalist, and very few people are, I think that our modern day problem is that we have so much. And as you were explaining about having babies, right? People, I mean, we literally shower each other with gifts when it's a wedding or a newborn, because that's how we show love, right? Gifting. And so it's overwhelming for people. So I think one of people's biggest pain points is editing the excess. And when people are looking at their things and they're trying to figure out if they can be without it, and there's always like, oh, but what if I need it? What if it? And I always encourage people to approach that question from an abundance viewpoint versus a scarcity viewpoint. And if you approach that, what if I need it? Well, maybe, could I repurchase it? Could I borrow it from somebody? And also thinking about the cost of holding on to it. People think, well, I can't rebuy a set of skis. And I think, well, you probably could rent them, and you could rent a nicer pair that's higher performance, but more that it's the type of idea that what does it take to store that set of skis? You have to pay a mortgage or rent. You might have to put them in a storage unit, which is expensive. It takes up space in your home. It takes up mental space to be like, oh, when did we purchase those? Are they still safe? It might be just better, in the case of that type of thing, just to rent it or just to borrow it and not to purchase it. So those are some of the questions I ask my clients. Do you have to buy it? Could you borrow it? Especially with baby things. Now they have toy rental facilities where you can literally just rent the toys. They send you what's appropriate for your child's developmental time period. They curate them for you in advance. They're generally beautifully made, and they disinfect them before they send them to you. And you're spending money for a rental, but you're not having to store them in between and then work on getting rid of them. So we're lucky that we have these options now. But yeah, that's probably one of the biggest things that people come to me. Their source of stress is just the excess of all of the items in their homes.
Wow, that's a new one. I had not heard about renting toys. And something else I think that's kind of good about that is not only are you not holding on to all of these toys, but you're able to expose your child to new and different things that you don't actually have to buy and own. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much in this economy, you can rent just about anything, right? We used to have to take taxis. When was the last time you took a taxi, Carol? Right? So now we rent their car and them driving us someplace on a short-term basis. It's a really nice model. So
exactly. Now I know that a lot of busy moms like me wonder how to keep up with all their kids' stuff. So when you first, now I know your model is a little bit different, but um when you work with a parent and you kind of see their space, I guess maybe virtually, what are the first questions that you ask them, or what are the first tasks that you have them do?
sure. So that's a great question. So, when people call, they've been thinking about there's something that's pushed them over the edge, right? So often one of my very first questions, they'll say, "Oh, I just need help. I don't even know where to get started." And so I say to them, "What's driving you most crazy, or what do you most crave?" And when they look at it from that perspective, or I say, why did you call? What was the thing that happened? And, there's like, I can't find my passport. Okay, now we know, right? So once we know either that turning point thing that made them, but if they're not sure, I'll ask them what makes them drive them crazy or what they crave. So if they say to me, I don't know, the minute I walk into my home, I just want to turn around and run away, then let's do that entryway or that mud room, right? Let's find homes for the kids' backpacks, their lunch boxes, their boots, their shoes, the umbrellas, the coats, the hats, the hockey stick, all of the stuff that they're mom's tripping over when she's walking in the door. Sometimes they say, "Oh, I just don't want to rely on so much takeout. I want to feed my family a healthy meal at the kitchen table." So then we need to look at the kitchen and the pantry and make sure that those ingredients are on hand, that she can put together a 20-minute freezer meal, and that the kitchen table's clear so that she can feed her family and have that family time. If she says to me, I start the day miserable because I can barely get myself dressed, I can't get the kids dressed. Well, then let's look at the closets. Let's look at the bathrooms, right? Let's try to streamline those processes to make it easier for those things to happen. Or in the case, I can't find my passport, my credit card bill didn't get paid, then it's maybe the paper. It's usually financial issues generally manifest themselves with paper disorganization. So we might then look at the paperwork in the office. And now, of course, we have a lot of people working from home permanently, right? We never thought that, I mean, here we are almost 3 years later, that, we were just desperate. We just pulled up a tray table and an old dining room chair and sat in front of a window. But now we've got the computer from work and a ring light, and we still are sitting in the old dining room chair. And that's when I say, let's really set up a workspace. If you're going to be working from home more than 50% of the time, let's give you a space that's productive, that works for you, not against you. So that's what I usually ask is what makes them crazy, or what do they crave? And they'll tell me. If they're like, I can't get a good night's sleep, then let's start in the bedroom. And even though nobody but them might see it,
Right.
it will make a difference.
Oh, definitely. Absolutely. I tell you, I mean, after one of our sessions, or even if I didn't work with you in particular, but I put into practice some of the tools that you gave me,
Yeah.
I would just be so proud of that area, whatever area that I worked on, and I have to come back and look at it again. It
Yeah.
really is a good feeling, that clarity that it gives you when your space is clear and organized. Now, what are five of like your favorite tools or strategies for organizing kids stuff? You know, the clothes and
I
all
love
that.
this question.
We'll be right back after this. You love your kids. You do your very best for them. But sometimes it feels like it's just not enough. And you're so sure you're the only one who feels this way. The truth is, you're not alone. It is also true that there are some things you're doing quite right. And there's a community who would love to exchange ideas with you. I'm Carol Maletta, creator of the Parenting 411, a portal for parents where I share information parents need through webinars and masterclasses. And not only that, the parents there support each other on this amazing journey in the Parenting 411 community group on Facebook. I can't wait to meet you in the community. And we're back with the Parenting 411.
So I think that one of the biggest things is that autonomy is really important. So pretty much if your child can speak and walk and feed themselves, then they can help out. So and kids want to help out, right? They really do want to help out. So for instance, give them the tools they need so they can manage it. So with clothing, one of the things I've done for a lot of my younger, parents with younger kids want to get dressed in the morning. And first of all, I say, just let them wear, as long as they have clothes on and protected from the elements. I don't care if it matches. So for a 4-year-old boy, we just set up a series of bins, and he would just pick one from each bin. So if it was summertime, socks, underwear, shorts, and a shirt. Mm-hmm. Fabulous. If it was wintertime, socks, underwear, jogging pants or sweatpants, and a long sleeve shirt. Mm-hmm. He could choose any that he wanted. He had his favorites, but he could get himself dressed. He could reach those bins. They were on the floor in his closet, and it was, athleisure wear. So it didn't need to be hung up. Who cares if it's wrinkled? It's a 4-year-old. He's gonna, mm-hmm. And the pride that he had, mm-hmm. Because that got set up when I was, there and he was at school. He came home, his mom showed him the system, left to right. And, she texted me, she's like, you can't imagine. He was so proud when his grandmother came. He's like, look, Nanny, I'm going to get myself dressed. And he needed a little bit of help getting his arms through the shirt, but he chose those things. Mm-hmm. And then once he knew he could help put his laundry away, Mom said, here, put these all in the short sleeve bin. Okay, mm-hmm. I know which one that is. And so that was a great solution. So if you can think about solutions like that for your kids' clothing, mm-hmm. And also give them permission. If they aren't going to wear it, I call it a donation station. It's literally like a shopping bag right okay. there in the closet. Maybe, you thought it was super cute, but it's got an itchy tag in it. Or they just don't feel, the color purple. Well, then let them have the autonomy to say, I'm never going to wear that. I'm going to donate it to somebody else. So that really helps with kids' clothes. You asked about toys. Oh, I could do a whole day's lecture on toys, but I'm going to give you some of my top tips. And that is, I call it the 3 L's, and it's lids, labels, and low. Right? So we want to keep the toys low where the kids can reach them. I really like the solution of, just as we decant our dry goods into, canisters, mm-hmm. I like to decant the toys into clear bins. I get them from the Container Store. They have used the same bin. They have the mold. Container Store owns the mold for their clear. They used to be called shoe boxes, but mm-hmm. They were gendered. They were lady shoe boxes and men's shoes boxes. Now they call them small, medium, and large or something. They finally got with the non-gender idea, but there are storage boxes. Container Store owns the mold, so it will never change. And they do have them in fashion colors, don't go there. Don't get a fashion color. Get a clear bin so that your children can look inside, but also put a label on it. If they're not readers yet, then go ahead and have them draw a picture. Dinosaurs, and let them choose the words. When I used to work with kids, I'd say, okay, what do you call them? And I would have called them like figurines or something. Well, no kid's going to call it a figurine. He's like, oh, those are my action guys. I'm like, okay, action guys. So that mom knew what to call it, and he could recognize the letter A. He knew what his action guys, so he could put them away. And this is where the lids come in. If the bin has a lid on it and it says dinosaurs, you're going to have to open that to scoop up, tea party stuff and put it in there. Nobody's going to do that. And that's where you often see these open bins. They've sold them for decades now. And the problem with the open bins is that when mom says, clean up, it's dinner time, Johnny's just going to scoop up whatever's on the floor and shove it in a bin.
Right.
But then he's not going to be able to find it when he's looking for it. And those bins just become a mess. So I really like lidded clear boxes. Also, if they have lids, you can stack them 1 or 2 high, right? So that also saves us space because, you don't have to purchase a shelf or a Pottery Barn system. It's just a bunch of boxes stacked on each other. And chances are their favorite box is going to be the one on top, right?
True.
So, 80-20, we all wear the same 20% of clothes 80% of the time. Kids play with the same 20% of their toys 80% of the time. So that's another tip. I went to a home once, and the father was an engineer, and he had purchased his son Lincoln Logs, Legos, Connects, Magnetiles, you name it, anything that was like a building kind of thing. And there's so many of them for his son. And his son was a dreamer and an artist. And when we were organizing the toys, all he wanted to do was draw the picture that we stuck on the front of the bin. And as much as the dad wanted him to be like an engineer and want to build a tower, all this kid wanted to do was draw. And so I think you need to check in with your children, right? Because that's also going to help guide you with how to organize their toys. So those are some of my quick tips. Consistent containers, and you can just keep rotating. And that's the other thing. If you've got all of the toys in consistent containers, right? Small, medium, large, extra large size boxes, you can just leave half out, and the other half can get tucked away in a closet. Toy rotation, your childminder does that, your teachers do that. It brings it, makes it fresh. So even if you're just rotating, this month it's Magnetiles, next month it's Lincoln Logs, next month it's an erector set, next month it's Legos, that's going to make it all fresh and new. Those toys all teach the same thing, right? Because toys are teaching tools, but they make it different. So maybe, if you've got all of those, Melissa and Doug, they've got the make a pizza, they've got the make a cake, they've got just only have the make a pizza one out in the kids, toy kitchen, and tuck the other one away, bring the other one out. It's going to look fresh and new. So that's another thing. If you can rotate toys, that really helps. The more you can minimize decision making, because we all have decision fatigue, right? When, the kid walks into their playroom and it's as big as my living room with mounds and mounds and mounds of stuff. They don't know, so they're just not going to be able to make a decision. But if you say, let's either do a puzzle, let's draw, or let's have a tea party. Okay, I want to have a tea party, right? So let's see. You asked me about books.
Yes.
That's the other thing. Like you and I have books, like a bookshelf. It's, the book is a hardback. It's got some substance to it. But kids' books are just paper books, right? They have no substance to them. So I really suggest for organizing kids' paperback books, you put them in a bin, a nice canvas bin or something like that. and let the kids flip through them like we used to flip through our albums, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody who listens will remember what it was like flipping through albums, but you can see the cover, and that way you can put all the chapter books in one bin, all of the holiday books. I always had whatever Valentine's Day is coming up, whatever the holiday books are in one bin, and that and you can even label them that way: chapter books, holiday books, little treehouse books, whatever I have no idea what it is currently. I have a 24-year-old. I don't know what kids are reading nowadays. But if you organize them that way, you don't have to try to keep them as tidy, because books can get super messy super fast. So if it's a book with, like the Ripley's Believe It or Not books, or the Daring Boys books, or the Daring Girls books, those were some books with some substance to them. Those can go on the bookshelf. But I think all of the other paperback books are so much better in bins, and just label the topic of the bin. Oh, and you asked me about games. You see, I have an answer for everything. For games, again, so often we see games stacked horizontally, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got 6 games stacked this high and Risk is on the bottom, chances are you're going to be like, no, I'm not going to play a game, right? It's too hard. But if you can take your games, horizontal is hidden, vertical is visible. If you can take your game boxes and just set them on their sides like they're books, and I just use a big rubber band to keep it together. And that way, you want to play Risk, you just pull Risk right out of the shelf. Now they used to make games kind of like 16, 18 inches. Sometimes they wouldn't fit on a shelf, but now they're making almost all of the games in square size boxes. So you might have a few older games that you're just going to have to put horizontal and stack maybe 2 or 3 high. But the more modern games, I can almost guarantee you can have them all on a bookshelf, and put them side by side so that you can just pull out the one you want to play. And that works for puzzles as well, puzzle boxes. And that makes it so much easier to choose the one you really want. And also to organize them by age range, right? So don't have your Candyland mixed in with, Pictionary.
Monopoly.
Monopoly, exactly. You want it so that kids know which shelf, like the bottom shelf. Okay, sweetheart, let's play a game. Choose anything off the bottom shelf. That's going to be age appropriate. It's not going to frustrate them. And then, and again, like, make sure that your adult games are not mixed in. What's that scandalous, I can't remember the name of it, but it's like has all kinds of naughty things. And those cards were mixed in with the kids' Uno cards. It's like, yeah, we need to keep the adult games very separate. So does that help?
Oh, yes. And you mentioned a lot of my favorites. The labels, my label maker, I love that. And the bins. And I would say to parents that maybe think, oh, I don't want to invest in these bins, but it's a gift that keeps on giving, because I still use those bins for things. Just take the label off. I mean, sometimes it was labeled for their toys and games and things like that, but I have not had to give those bins away. They just have found new uses as the children have gotten older. So it's not a bad investment. I mean, be thoughtful about how you're going to use them. You don't just want to go to Container Store or wherever you like to buy them and just buy an armful just because they're cute and you're not really sure how you're going to use them. But if you're thoughtful about it, they're certainly going to be useful later. I have found so many great uses for all of them, and I've given them to other family members when there's something I needed with my mother. I helped organize her apartment with my bins. I have a bin in the back of my car right now with my books in it, because I never know when somebody's going to ask if they want, if they can buy a book from me. So I travel with those in the back of the car.
Perfect.
So I and my label maker, I just love that for sure.
Yeah, it's absolutely worth owning a label maker. I think I think I was once quoted in the Washington Post: let's not label our children, but let's label everything else. because words are powerful. And even though you think, oh, it's a clear bin, I can look through there and see it. It's much faster to read a word, Halloween, even though you can see orange and black stuff inside the bin. So, so yeah, labels are a really valuable tool. And you're absolutely right. That's why I say don't get the fashion colors because they discontinue them. Just go with clear or white. And if it's a bin that fits beautifully on a certain piece of furniture, a shelf that you have, go ahead and buy a couple extra. Like I know, we don't want to overbuy, but there's nothing worse than, you have all of your bins perfectly match, one breaks, and then you've got a hole like a broken tooth and a smile. Like,
Good
so
point.
it's better to have a couple extra if you need, especially if it's kind of a real aesthetic look, if they're all beautiful wicker and they're all the same shade of wicker. That's something that sometimes you can't get the same one a couple of years later. So think about that as well, because functionality is so important, but aesthetics matter, right? We want to look at beautiful things. So yeah, that's my advice for that for sure.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So we talked a little bit about it, but I just want to circle back and see if you had any other ideas about how parents can hand over the responsibility for their stuff. Some ideas.
Yeah, so I think this is kind of twofold, right? First, parents have to model good behavior. And I think that is, we can't say, Johnny, pick up your toys when Johnny can look and see that your desk is a mess. There's stuff all over the kitchen counters, the laundry room, we can't even open the door. So, heal thyself, right? Physician heal thyself first. I think you have to address your things before you can ask the same of anybody in your family, be it your partner, your spouse, your children. So I would say, first, model great behavior. But then secondly, and again, kids want to help. Kids need to be taught, right? You can't just say, Anne and Andy, pick up the playroom. What does pick up the playroom look like? And that's where I want some really concrete information. So often, if we would do a playroom, we would put everything in place and we would take a photograph of it. And I'd ask mom to print out the picture because then Johnny, Anne and Andy know exactly where everything goes. And not to be gender specific, or child specific, because kids need to know how to share. But I do think that it's fair for children to have their own toys, right? These are my Hot Wheels. That's your American Girl, And so I would say if it's your toy that you don't want to have to share, that stays in your bedroom, right? You don't have to bring that out for a play date or share it with your sibling. But if it's in the shared playroom or play area, and go ahead and carve out a space for that, whatever that looks like, so that the kids know that they're responsible for that area. Sometimes it's just a 4 by 6 inch rug up against in a corner of a room. That's their play area and they're responsible for it. And if you could separate, this is where the kitchen and make believe goes, and this is where the crafting items go, and this is where the building Lego items go, then children will understand where things go back. They can follow a guideline. I had a young boy with a gazillion different toys. And so, especially trucks and cars. Kids want concrete information. So the mom had an old table runner and we put it in the corner. And we said, Johnny, any car truck you can fit on the runner, you can keep. You decide. And that kid, he was like, okay. And he parked a couple of the small cars under the big trucks, but and he understood that was the guideline. That was the limit. When a new car truck came as a toy, he had to choose because they could only be parked on their special mat.
Right.
So, boundaries. When my daughter was young, she was allowed as many stuffed animals as would fit in a holder on the back of her door. It wasn't a shoe holder. It had like elastic pockets. I wish I could find it now. I found it at some like dollar store in upstate New York and never again. And so all of her stuffed animals, except for the one that was on her bed, had to fit in that thing. So it was a boundary because I could not abide by a gazillion stuffed animals in her bed. I'm like, they live here. You can choose who you want to sleep with. And that worked for us. So forming boundaries around things, numbers of things, because numbers are concrete. Kids can count to 10. You get 10, fill in the blank.
Mm-hmm.
Another, I do have a lot of, another thing is if early on you can limit yourself to just 3 of one system. So my daughter had Polly Pockets, Barbies, and American Girl.
Okay.
That don't hand me another doll system. Don't buy her a Brat doll, or I guess they have LOL dolls or whatever. Stick within, and those are the 3 systems. There were no crazy critters. I don't even know what anything's called anymore.
Uh-huh.
Same thing with like boys. You get Hot Wheels, rotor trucks, and one other. Because if people start bringing in other things, then the tracks don't fit, the clothes don't fit. It's really easy to know American Girl doll clothes, Barbie clothes, Polly Pocket clothes.
Mm-hmm.
Easy to sort, easy to separate. So that's another easy tip. And if you can adopt that early on, especially when your other grandparents are gifting, that helps define it. Let the grandparents pay for the American Girl stuff. That's my advice.
And that's good advice. I hadn't even thought about that. I really hadn't. That's good. Now I know another challenging area for moms is what should they hold on to?
Ooh.
Like there are some things, might be favorite items of clothing or stuffed animals, or of course finger painting and macaroni necklaces and all of that stuff. How can they decide what to hold on to and how to hold on to it? How do they preserve it?
We'll be right back after this. As the saying goes, mother's work is never done, except when it really is. I'm talking about my new book, Mother's Work, Pearls of Wisdom and Gems from My Journey. I share my transformation from an outmanned, overwhelmed mom of twin boys to a parenting strategist and consultant, and being honored as DC Mother of the Year by American Mothers Incorporated. In Mother's Work, I tell you about the 7 guideposts that kept me anchored as I weathered the peaks and valleys of motherhood. Grab your copy at carolmaletta.com/motherswork. And we're back with the Parenting 411.
So I've got a question for you, Carol. How much of your stuff did your parents save from your childhood?
Well, really not that much.
And do you feel a hole in your heart, or are you okay with that? Sorry, had to ask.
Sometimes I no, I don't feel a hole in my heart. I mean, for sure.
Yeah.
But sometimes I wish, like, oh, I wish I still had that book. I read it all the time, and I wish we had saved that. But nope,
Right.
I don't have a hole in my heart.
I use the exact same example. My mother saved absolutely nothing from my childhood, and I'm okay with it because she showered me with love and memories.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I had a client, 40-year-old woman, whose parents downsized, and they showed up with a trailer full of stuff that they had saved. And they just kept bringing box after box after box. There were not 1, not 2, but 4 giant bins of stuffed seals because she collected them when she was 13.
Oh, God.
Now, if they had saved 1 stuffed seal, like her favorite stuffed seal, or the one that they bought for her in Hawaii, but it was overwhelming.
Yes.
And my client, she's like, she just put them in her basement. They sit there to this day. She will probably never look through them because it's so overwhelming to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
If her parents had done her the favor of editing those things in advance, then the things that they did save would have been so much more meaningful, right? So I want you to think about, people are like, well, what if he's Picasso? Well, chances are he's not going to be. But, then only having 24 of his drawings from age 4 to 12 makes them that much more valuable. Like, but if you've got bin after bin after bin, so, I say it's hard in the moment to make those decisions, right? So go ahead and give yourself a collection container, right? So go ahead and save the full year's worth of drawings or stuff. First of all, you don't need any workbooks, any, like worksheets that they would do. It's the really creative. So it's usually artistically creative or writing creative, right? Like what we did on our summer break, or, what I want to be when I grow up, those kinds of things. The most important thing you're going to do once you've collected them all is give yourself a deadline. I usually say, the weeks right after school ends, get the backpack cleared out, get and take the time to look through it. If you saved one item from every month of a 12-year school, grades 1 through 12, that's a gross of items. That's 144 items. And you really want to try to condense it to the best of the best.
Right.
So if you can do it with your kids, that's great. What makes a difference to them? I know I had a client who had saved all of the artwork and taken pictures of it and put it in these archive books. And she had one from grade 1 through 5, like every artwork that her kid did throughout the year. And it was laborious for the mom to take the pictures, upload them, put them in the book, made captions. And then the child ended up being a writer. She actually is a journalist. And she's like, Mom, you didn't save anything I wrote. She's like, I don't care about my art. And
Wow.
and so all of that effort. So it would have been better to save a little bit of art, a little bit of writing, a little bit of the, sports, varsity basketball, a little bit of all of that, the best of the best. Because if you've edited it down to the best of the best, then it really is meaningful. The other really important thing that I'm going to tell your listeners is that each and everything that you save has to be nagged, NAGED. And I want you to think of me, that bossy organizer lady that you heard on Carol's podcast, sitting on your shoulder, nagging you. And what that stands for is name, age, grade, editorial, and date. Okay. And you think, I'll remember. Oh, no, you won't. And I only have one child and I can't remember. And if you have 2 kids, then everything has to have their name on it. So it would be, Susie, age 3, grade. Okay, she was in the rainbow preschool room, or grade 1 through 12, but even with a preschool. Editorial, if it's something you're going to save and they're that little, you might need to add her first Valentine heart that she made. Looks like a blob to me, but that then it was really important. So editorial and date, February 14th, 2023, right? Because you'll think, oh, I'll remember she was 3 in 2023. Well, you might, because if she was born in 2020, but chances are you still won't.
Right.
And you need to place it in time for it to have value to Susie when Susie's 40 and she sees this red blob and she's like, Mom, what the? Oh, I was 3. Oh, I was in the rainbow room. Oh, my first heart, Valentine's Day. Oh, I get it. Right. So name, age, grade, editorial, date. Sometimes you don't have to put the name on it if you only have one kid like me. Sometimes you don't need editorial. It's obviously a picture of a dog or whatever. But the age, grade, and date are really key. So if you're going to save it, make sure it's nagged.
Right. And, and I appreciate your help with that, with memorabilia as well, bins that we have for a few things that they really liked. And I have to tell you, that really came in handy a few years ago. I guess, is it 3 years ago? Because Zach was a huge Kobe Bryant fan.
Mm,
And he had the, official jersey and everything. He wore that thing. And, when we got the news, I was like,
oh,
that's the first thing I did. I went downstairs, we got to find this thing, we got to find it. So, we had eventually did find it, but, because we had probably have more bins than we should have memorabilia, but it was labeled. And
right.
so we knew where to look. But yes, we were able to get our hands on that thing. But I tell you, you really do have to exercise moderation with that.
Yes.
Not everything deserves to be saved.
Not everything deserves to be saved. So really, the best of the best. And when people are sorting through the memorabilia, especially if it's their own,
Mhm.
I don't even have to be helping them. I'm doing something else and I'll hear them. They'll go like, oh, 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 I'm like, keep that one. It's a feeling. It's not, memorabilia is heart-based. It's not head-based, right?
Right.
So if you're like, should I save it? Chances are no. If you're like thinking about it let your heart tell you. That
Right.
I think is the best guideline for meaningful memorabilia. Also, and this doesn't really apply to kid stuff, but I don't advise saving sad memorabilia. Like,
Good
I
point.
had a client who like saved all of the horrific stuff from her contentious divorce. I'm like,
Oh,
save the divorce decree and get rid of the rest of it, right?
right.
So anyway,
That's a good point. That's
yeah,
a good point because sometimes we do hold on to that stuff. It sounds to hear you say it, it's like, why would I keep something horrible? But
yeah.
sometimes we do.
Why do
Things,
we want to relive the especially anger, sadness? Like I have a client who keeps prayer cards from different people's funerals, and she looks through them, but that's more of she's saying a prayer, a positive memory for those
mhm,
people. It's not
mhm.
people. She's not saving them for people that she didn't care about. She's saving
Right,
them for people she loved, right? So that's a,
right.
a much more positive. It might be sad and kind of bittersweet, but it's a much more positive aspect. But if it's negative stuff
Yes.
that you're holding on to, oh, just let it go. Life is way too short.
Yes, you're right about that. Well, listen, how can moms learn more about your services and how can they keep up with you?
Absolutely. So, if they're on Facebook, I have a private Facebook or a public Facebook group. You have to ask me to be in it. It's called Organizing Solutions for Busy Women. And we have over 1,700 people. It's a great group. People ask me questions, ask each other questions. And it's just a really nice resource. You'll also see I post live at 5, I do on Sunday with my musings. And that way, if you join that group, you'll also join my Tip Tuesday, and I have my most current giveaway is an ebook called 12 Types of Papers to Toss Today. So if paper organization is on your list, I'd love to send you that free ebook. You can sign up at my website, which is C. Lee Cawley, spelled CLEECAWLEY.com/toss, because I want you to be able to toss those things and not clog up your life. Um, so that's where people can find me, generally at cleecawley.com or at my Facebook group, Organizing Solutions for Busy Women.
Wonderful. Now, are you on Instagram by any
I
chance?
am on Instagram, and I think it's Clee_simplify you on Instagram. And pretty much everything gets posted everywhere. I don't do a lot of the posting. I have a virtual assistant who does that for me.
Mhm.
So I'm always kind of surprised. I'm like, oh, that's a nice reel. Look where that came from.
Right, right. Well, good, good. And do you have any events or anything coming
Oh,
up?
yeah. Thank you for asking. Absolutely. Actually, if people are listening to this in real time,
Mhm.
on February 16th, 19th, and 22nd of 2023, just after Valentine's Day, I actually have a free live masterclass that I'm teaching, and it's called The Proven Path to Conquer Your Paper Clutter for Good. 5 clear categories that you must know about. And in this masterclass, they're all the same, but just choose the time that works best for you. I will be teaching My 5 clear categories, I'm going to do some quick wins about setting up your desk for success. And if you come live, I've got another ebook I'm going to send you. And I've got some reasons why traditional organizing methods don't work. So I really want to reassure people. People are always like, oh, I'm such a mess. I'm like, nobody ever taught you these skills. Don't feel guilty that your office is a mess. Did they teach you that at school? No. Did your parents teach you this? No. Did, so don't feel bad about it. Anyway, we're going to have a lot of fun. It's a fun hour. And like I say, it's absolutely free. I want to share some information, and I'd love for any of your listeners to join us there. And thank you so much for asking. And if for some reason you hear this podcast after those masterclass, be sure to go to cawley.com/toss, and I can still send you the free ebook about the 12 types of papers to toss today.
I might pick that one up myself.
Yeah, it's a good one.
So thank you so much for joining. I so much good advice here that I hope our listeners really follow through on, and by all means attend her masterclass. She worked wonders for me when she helped me get organized when my children were younger. And, I just like to hear all the latest tips and how things have evolved, because that was like really 20 years ago when we worked together.
Early on. The kids were little. Yeah.
I know there's more that I could learn for the life I'm living right now. So that's great. And so everybody continue to follow me at The Parenting 411 on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. By all means, please like and subscribe to this podcast and share it with your friends. They will thank you. And remember, it's never too late to be the parent that you want to be.